going to show how to easily make a distribution or a histogram of student scores using Excel. So what I have is I have a grade book in which I have the students, their overall grade, and their class inside of a table. And I also have a little bit more information. So I'm going to also track their scores by their race, their gender, and their financial status. So the first step is, if I'm going to try to make a graph like this, I'm going to want to be inside the table. I will go up to the Insert tab and I will click on PivotTable. And Excel will ask me, okay, this is the table, where do you want to place it? And I'm going to just say on a new worksheet and click OK. So now I'm on a new worksheet, and what you can see is that I have a sort of blank pivot table, and then on the right hand side I have pivot table fields. And so I need to decide what fields am I going to plot. So the first thing I plot is I'll probably want the overall grade. So I'm going to drag and drop overall grade into the rows. And if we look over here, this is what has happened. We have all the different possible overall grade values in our row labels. And that isn't super useful. But let's mix it up a bit. Let's go and take overall grade and then put it into values. Okay, so now it's a little more interesting. I have the overall grade and I have the sum of the overall grade. Well, obviously there's 2 students there and only 1 student there, but that's not extremely useful. Let's see if we can change this a little bit. So under the values, I'm going to click on inside where it says sum of overall grade, and I'm going to change this to count. So when I say count of overall grade, now I can see I have 2 students with 66.7, 1 student with 70, 1 student with 72, etc. And that isn't super helpful. I'd much rather have these values binned. So this is a little bit tricky, but if you click, so if I'm right here, I'm selecting one cell, but if I move my cursor up, I can select the whole range. And then what I want to do is I want to go up to the PivotTable tools, and I'm going to go and I'm going to say group selection. And what it says is, where do I want to start? And I'll say it's 60. And I'm going to go up to 100 by tens, and I'll click OK. And so now I have a nice little table that says I have 2 students between 60 and 70, 5 between 70 and 80, 4 between 80 and 90, and 8 between 90 and 100. So that's good. Now I'd like to graph it. So there's a couple different ways to do this. I'm going to hit Analyze, and then I will click on PivotChart. And it will ask me what kind of chart I like. That looks okay, so I just click Alright. And this is what I have so far. So over here, I have the number of students, and here I have what grade they're at. So that looks pretty good. But there's a couple things that are important. One of which is, let's say I went back to where I was and I changed some of these values. So this became, I don't know, a 0, for example. When I'm back over at my pivot table and my pivot chart, these haven't updated. So it's very important that whenever you update data, you physically have to click on Analyze and hit Refresh. And then the data is refreshed. But that's very, very important to always refresh your data. Alright, so now let's see what else we can do with this. Right now it just has the overall distribution, which is pretty meaningful and pretty helpful. But let's graph some other stuff. So let's start and see what happens when I drag the class field. So I clicked on the class field and I'm just going to drag that into columns. And now I have the class, and I can compare very quickly my first class and my second class. If I want to not show that field, I just drag it off, and then I can look at something else. So we'll go with what we originally had, and here's financial aid status. So I have high, medium, low, but that's not quite the order I want. So if I want to rearrange stuff, all I have to do is I click up on the top, and then I have to click here, and I just drag over. And now it is low, medium, high, and I can see how my students are doing. So that's a quick introduction to pivot tables and pivot charts for graphing a distribution.